So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Rajat Sudan. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be a main host today. With me, I have Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert, and he's going to support us during this webinar. He's a senior GMAT strategy expert. That is, he's probably helped, if I were to really say, about 6,000 students ace the GMAT. So someone with a lot of experience, someone who understands what it takes to you know, help people get to that 730, 740 score or so. So what are we going to do in this webinar? In this webinar, we're going to talk about how will you get to that score of 730 or higher, and we're going to really talk about a few things. We're going to start with what is the GMAT test, and then go all the way to building that personalized study plan and then executing on that personalized study plan. Okay. Let me actually hide a few things over here. So for those of you who have not experienced our free trial, we have an excellent free trial. I recommend that post this webinar, definitely check it out, look at it and see if that learning style aligns with how you go about learning. We also have some upcoming free webinars. So we have a number properties webinar that is tomorrow. In this webinar, we're going to talk about remainders. You're going to start with some of the very basic questions and remainders, and then we're going to extend that webinar and enable you to answer 700 level DS questions. And then next week, exactly a week from now, we have a webinar on GMAT's intense correction, in which we're going to talk about the famous meaning-based approach that e-GMAT pioneered. Also, we have a couple of other webinars that I'm going to talk about during this session. Okay, but enough of that. Let's just kind of get to know you guys a bit better. I want to figure out, when do you guys plan to take the test, number one, and number two, what's your target GMAT score? It just helps us gauge the pulse of this room. It helps us understand, what kind of scores are you aiming for, and essentially how ambitious you are. The kind of score that you're aiming for also is a testament to how much effort you're willing to put in. So yeah, and then let's just I want to get some more inputs from you guys to really say, let's get a short answer pod here. And for some reason, yeah, now the mouse is working. Let's get a short answer pod over here. I want to figure out, what is it that you're looking forward to from this webinar? I mean, what kind of questions would you like answered through this webinar? Let's get those in here as well. This is a short answer pod where you put in and type in your answers and press enter, and I should be able to see that. All right, strategy to go through the GMAT. What else? Let's get a few more responses. 710 to 760 in a month. Oh, that's easy. I can actually give you case studies around that. How do you follow the e-GMAT program? That's wonderful. DS question on number properties. That's unfortunately something that I won't be able to cover today, but tomorrow, do attend tomorrow's webinar. Taking the GMAT by the end of December. How do you go about improving from that 530? Good. 680 to 760. Okay. So anyone who's in the 660 area or so, that is what we call as a last mile push program. On our homepage, it's a long homepage. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see some case studies, and just to give you an idea of how we plan that improvement, and then you can write to me, because those are very, very specific plans. We need a lot of insights to give you a good enough study plan, or to give you a study plan that will work for you. But again, how do you get a score plateau? We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss why do you get a score plateau. 2 to 3 month study plan. We're going to really answer, do you need a 2-month study plan, or do you need a 4-month, or do you need a 40-day study plan or so, and what do you need to do? Is it realistic to jump from 530 to 700? Very realistic. We actually have we have many success stories on our YouTube channel. In fact, about 3 in the last 1 month or so that you can watch to figure that out as well, which are actual case studies. But again, I'm going to answer all of these questions in this webinar. And then let's get one additional question over here, so that again it helps us profile. This one is a loaded question. It has many options. I'm going to really say, it's just which target school are you aiming for, and just categorize these schools. And the top 3 are USB schools. So either you're aiming for an M7 or a top 20 or a not top 20 B schools. So these are mutually exclusive categories. All three of them belong to the US. Then you have Canadian, European, Indian. Some of you may be undecided. Some of you don't know what M7 is, and for you, I have that option. It's like, hey, Rajat, what are you talking about? You can tell me that as well. But yeah, in general, it helps us understand how's this, what kind of aims does this group have, and just what's the makeup of this group as a whole. All right, so with regards to target GMAT score, 730 to 750, biggest group, but half the half of this group is over there. And again, we have another 30% around that in the 760 or higher mark. So overall, fairly ambitious, but about 80% of this group is in that 730 or higher mark, and then 710, 720, another 20%. Very few people in the 600 to 700. Again, there's nothing wrong in aiming for that score. It's just this is the makeup of that group overall. And then with regards to when do people plan to take the GMAT, again, the biggest group is those who haven't taken a date as of yet. Presumably, you're yet to start preparing for the test. And then we have folks in 46 to 75 days, 31 to 45 days, and so on and so forth as well. Again, that's a reasonably good representation in each segment. A very high number of people in that 16 to 30 days as well. So that's good. And then with regards to which schools are people aiming for, the most popular European B schools, I'm actually a bit curious about that, but then as just a simple category, but if you look at US B schools, you add that up, you're looking at about 44% of people aiming for US B schools. Very surprised that only one person is aiming for a non-T20B school, especially considering the high GMAT scores, because typically if you have a 740, if you get to a non-T20B school, you're typically looking at a full ride over there. Many of our students have done that, and so yeah, you can get that MBA for free, and with the job market in the US the way it is, I mean, really good employment opportunities as well. But about 27% around the European B schools, 20% around Indian B schools, and then a couple of people don't know what the hell is all of this, and that's okay. You'll get to know. You're probably just in the beginning of your MBA/GMAT journey. You'll figure it out or so. Only a few people are undecided, and that's okay too. But it's good to know. I mean, overall, you are very a group that knows what you want to do, what GMAT score you want to get to, where you want to apply to, and that's good to know. All right, so with that, let's go into our presentation pane. So this is what I call as a presentation pane, where I have a presentation which will aid me and in terms of what is it that I'm going to talk about. It will allow me to show information to you. And then you have a Q&A or a question and answer pod, which is right below the presentation pane. And what that does is, during the presentation or during my jibber jabber, if you have any question, you can post that question in the Q&A pod, and that way Sandeep can take that on. Again, just to make sure that we make the best use of your time and our time, I'd recommend that you keep questions that are very relevant to what we're talking about. So that way, we don't get deviated. And if you have questions that are a bit more personal in nature, you can post them, but I'd recommend that you wait till the end of the webinar. That will allow us to get more information from you and give you an answer that you can actually use and benefit from. Okay, so with that, a majority of this webinar is going to be focused on the GMAT. I'll talk a bit about business schools as well, because ultimately the only reason you want to ace the GMAT is because you want to get into a certain business school. I'm sure very few people here love the GMAT just for the sake of doing this. Okay. Just show of hands, audio hopefully is still good for you. I'm going to put in a yes no poll here. So just hold on. Actually, I'm going to. All right, I think I know you guys are doing a show of hands. I'm going to do is the raise hand function actually makes the system slightly slower. I'm going to make sure that you guys can't raise hands. That way, if you have questions, you can post them in the Q&A pod. But again, that'll ensure the experience is really smooth for everyone. Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, so with that, let's start with one of the fundamentals of acing the GMAT, and this is something which is really important. Why? Because it is one thing that I want you to remember from this webinar. I want you to remember actually multiple things, but if there's the first thing that I want you to remember and I want you to take away, is this one piece. When it comes to acing the GMAT, it's all about building ability. And the reason why I mentioned this right at the get-go is that when people think about preparing for the GMAT, one of the first things they worry about is hey, I've got to be able to answer questions quickly. I've got to figure out, how the hell am I going to last that 3 hour and 6 minute long exam? I'm going to figure out it's an adaptive test, which question to skip, which one to attempt, and so on and so forth. These things, yes, important. They're somewhat important, I would say. But when it comes to this building ability versus all of these things, this is 80%, and the rest combined is 20% or less. I mean, essentially, if you don't have ability, all of these things don't even matter. These things start to matter once you have the prerequisite ability. Okay. Now, ability is not an abstract term when it comes to the GMAT. It is a very definitive term. It's a very numerical term. It's a metric that you measure. And I'm going to really talk about what that metric is, because if you understand what that ability metric is, you will have a shining light that's going to guide you throughout your GMAT preparation, regardless of whether you use e-GMAT or whether you use another prep resource. It's the same ability that you've got to aim for, because it's related to the GMAT. So what is ability? You think about ability, I'm going to actually talk about another term as well, which is a misleading term in the context of the GMAT, which is accuracy. Now, what is accuracy? Accuracy is, when you take a quiz, you actually get a certain percentage of questions correct, and accuracy is what is that percentage. Now, accuracy is what I call as an absolute measure. So let's say you take a 10 question quiz and you get 8 out of those 10 correct, and you say my accuracy is 80%. It tells you how you did. It doesn't tell you anything about how you are compared to others. That's why I call it an absolute measure. So you may take a quiz, you may score 80%, your ability might be 50th percentile if half the people who take the same quiz or same set of questions actually get, if 80% of them get, half of them get 80% accuracy or so, or higher. So that's why accuracy on the GMAT, very imprecise measure. What is ability? Ability is how good you are compared to others. So again, let's say you take a 10 question quiz, you get 7 out of those 10 correct. If those questions are hard, your ability could be 90th percentile. And that's something that you've got to understand. A lot of people worry about accuracy in the context of the GMAT. Not as great a measure. Ability is a much better measure. And to really just tell you why that's the case, I'm going to really talk about how an adaptive test works. Why? Because the GMAT, so computer adaptive test. So what you see over here on this is, a chart of how people have attempted this. On the x-axis, you have question numbers. On the y-axis, you have the difficulty level of question. The higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. So we're going to take two students, student 1 and or as case 1, as is written over here, and student 2 or case 2. So student 1 gets the first question. The first question, for simplicity, is usually the median difficulty level. He gets the first question right. Then gets the second question, again, a slightly higher difficulty level. You know that. Why? Because we're going higher on the y-axis as you go from question number 1 to question number 2. And he gets that right as well. Gets the third question, even more challenging, gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is of a difficulty level between question 2 and question 3. How do we figure that out? You draw horizontal lines from here. You can see fourth question is between 3 and 2. Gets that right. Gets the fifth question, slightly more challenging. Gets that wrong. So that's student 1. We're going to only simulate the first 5 questions. Then let's talk about student 2. Student 2 or case 2 actually gets the first question. Let's get here. Gets that wrong. Gets the second question, which is easier. Gets that right. Why do we know it's easier? Because you're going down over here. Remember, y-axis was the difficulty level. This is your average difficulty line here. Gets the third question. So gets the second question right. Of course, gets the third question, which is a bit more challenging. Gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is easier. Gets that right. Gets the fifth question right as well. So at the end of question number 5, if I were to end this test, and I were to ask you who is doing better, who would you say is doing better? Is it student 1 or is it student 2? I'm going to put in a poll over here. Let's look at this. Who's doing better here? 1 or 2? I'm going to remove broadcast results. Sorry for not having done that. It actually removes the bias in all of this. Again, I have about 40 odd responses, close to over 100 people here in the webinar. A few more would be wonderful. Let's get about 60 responses. 46, 47. Who is doing better? Question number 5. I've ended the test over here. Who is doing better? Come on, each one of you is going to take the test. You've got to figure that out. 58, 59, 60. Great, wonderful. Let me end the poll. Let's broadcast the results. 74% of you say it's student 1, and you guys are absolutely correct. Student 1 is indeed doing better. 16 of you say student 2. That's not the case. Student 2 isn't doing better or so. For those of you who said student 2, I want to understand what was your reasoning. Again, doesn't matter right or wrong. The question is, what was your thought process when you selected student 2? And so that I can address that thought process. Maybe you've figured something out that I haven't, or maybe I can correct your thought process. But folks who said student 2 is doing better, why? What was your reasoning? Not student 1, but student 2. No, they could be trolling, but there could be a definitive reason. I always believe people take actions because they have reasons. I mean, you guys are here attending the webinar because you want to ace the GMAT. You don't love the GMAT, as I said earlier. You just want to get to a certain point. All right. Folks who said student 1's doing better. Why do you think student 1's doing better? Let's get the same poll. Why do you think student 1's doing better? I'm going to clear the sans poll. Well, ability is better. Why? More difficult questions answered. Yes, that's a good response. Answering harder questions. Yes. Okay. See, I got the answer for student 2 because on the later stage you got 2 answers correct, which is where some people think, hey, if you get consecutive answers right, you get a higher score, which is a misnomer. Okay. The reason why student 1's doing better is because he got more difficult questions, right? So each question on the GMAT has a certain weight. Each question allows the GMAT to make an estimate about your ability. And remember, what is your ability? It's how you perform compared to others. And if you answer harder questions correctly, then the GMAT thinks that you have higher ability, which is kind of how we go about thinking essentially in our real life as well. Anyone over here who's hired people? Anyone over here who's hired people over here? Right? Yes. Okay. Lots of you have hired people once. How do you go about figuring out if someone's suitable for a job? Let's kind of take an example of someone who you're hiring for a director level position. Now, what happens if you give that person some very basic questions and you answer, and that person answers those questions incorrectly? So you're hiring someone for a director level position. So not super senior, but not super junior either. A mid-level management. That's what a director is. So what happens? You give that person some very basic questions about the job that you're hiring that person for, and that person falters there. What's your thought process? You're going to ask easier questions, but very basic questions. What's your thought process? What judgment do you make if the first 2 questions that you ask are easy questions and the person doesn't do a great job? Anyone who's hired anyone is not competent enough. He shall not be hired, right? He may not be capable enough. The GMAT works the same way. The first question, reasonably basic question. If you're a 90th percentile student, and if you make a mistake, then the GMAT doesn't end the interview. Unfortunately, the GMAT is the goal of the GMAT is to figure out what your ability level is, not to really say whether to hire you for a director level. But the way it behaves is very human, where it says, okay, if you can't answer those basic questions, then essentially I'm going to give you easier questions so that to really figure out what your level is. And that's the reason why this goes down. Remember that parallel, because I'm going to show you lots and lots of data points, and in every data point, for every data point, that parallel will work. Okay. But let's come back to this, because you're going to come back to this parallel again. Now, just to summarize, both of them had identical accuracy. You know, both of them had 60% accuracy. But if you think about student 2, he got just one question which was at the median difficulty level, which was the first question. Just after that, the question picking aspect of the GMAT made a judgment call saying that this guy is not capable enough to be served even average difficulty questions. That was till question number 5. Now, question number 6, when he did that, you know, it increased the difficulty level once again. But till question number 5, okay, it did not even think that this warranted that the student warranted to be given difficult questions. Now, I know I see a lot of these questions on the right. One of the things that I'll tell you over here is, if you have a question about how the GMAT works, hold it, because most likely I will have answered this question in the next 10 minutes or so with data. So if you have questions about the first question, does the difficulty level continue to go up and all, those are good questions, great questions, legitimate questions, and I will answer those in about 10 minutes so that you have the right foundation before you get to that. Okay, so I'm going to clear that again. Those questions not in the short answer part on the right, but at the bottom. So please respect the process. That would also help. Okay, but the thing that it's really important when it comes to acing the GMAT is the first challenge that you have is that you want to make sure that you get difficult questions served to you. And then the next challenge is to answer those questions correctly. All right. Again, just as simple inferences over here. Again, is that clear? If you want to ace the GMAT, make sure that the test serves difficult questions to you, and then you've got to continue to answer them correctly. That's the way to ace the GMAT. Can you guys see that inference from here? You can type your answers in the short answer pod. Yes, no. Okay. Yeah, just very simple principle. I want you to forget about the first 10 questions of those other things. Just understand the fundamental principles. Why? Because these principles apply everywhere. Okay. So takeaway, your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. That's really important. These things, not as important. Okay. Now this was a simulation. What you see over here now, I'm going to present. So now that you have a fundamental understanding of how a computer adaptive test works, let's map that understanding to some real GMAT data. Okay. So this is what we call as a GMAT prep score report. Now GMAT prep was the GMAT mock test that the GMAC provided to us in the pre-2018 era. And those GMAT tests gave us a lot of insight about the GMAT work. Why? How the GMAT worked? Why? Because you could do a ton of simulations over there, and so that's why you see the verbal section having 41 questions here. Now, some of you may ask, does it still apply to you? And yes, we confirmed with the GMAC that the same algorithm still works. It's your current format of the GMAT has just fewer questions, but the way the GMAT works hasn't changed in the last 18 years or so. Okay. So what you see here is the verbal section attempt for 2 students. Now, if you carefully compare this, those red rectangles are the question numbers where the students made mistakes. And if you carefully compare them, if you compare question numbers 11 to question numbers 41 between these 2 points, what you're going to find is both of them are very similar. You know, both of them made 9 mistakes. The mistakes are kind of more or less evenly spaced and very, very comparable. The difference here is that this guy made mistakes on the first 2 questions. Again, if you purely judge these 2 students on the basis of accuracy, what you would say is that they're very, very similar. The GMAT does not think so. Student 1 got a verbal score of 43, which is 97th percentile. Now, assuming that 200,000 people take the test, what the GMAT told him was that, hey, student 1, you are among the top 6,000 students. Student 2 got a V32. This guy got a 65th percentile, and which means what the GMAT told him was that you are among the top 70,000 students. How many of you think when you look at this data, is like, how many of you are sweating and saying, hey man, the GMAT is really harsh. Okay. I'm going to put in a poll question here. Again, I love polls because it allows you guys to put in your answers without worrying about stuff. How many of you think the GMAT's really harsh? If you think the GMAT's harsh, you can say yes. If you don't think the GMAT's harsh and you say, hey, they deserve, the GMAT's a very fair test, say no. All right, let's get at least 60 responses. I have 44 responses. 46. And Dimple has a really great question, which I'm going to respond to in about 2 minutes. All right, I have 49 responses. Is the GMAT harsh is the question based on this data. 51. All right, I have more than 60 responses. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. And about 62% of you say, hey, the GMAT's harsh. 38% of you say it's not. Simple answer is the GMAT's not a harsh exam. I mean, a lot of people think and say, hey, man, if you're saying yes, then you're still thinking in terms of accuracies. That's not true, to be very frank. And I mean, a lot of people think, hey, 2 more questions wrong and I get bumped down from a 97th percentile to a 65th percentile. What people don't think is you can make 9 mistakes, you can still be in the top 3 percentile. You can get a quarter of the questions wrong and still be in the top 3 percentile. Okay. When you were thinking this, did you not think about that? Or were you still worried about this piece over here? I mean, you can get 9 out of 41 wrong and still be in the top 3 percentile. How great is that? And again, the reason why I have this is because I want you to not think in terms of accuracy on the GMAT, because the accuracy is not a great metric to compare things on the test. All right. As Arun Bha says, the question answered correctly are much more difficult. And he's absolutely correct. I'm going to actually prove that to you through ability scores. Okay. But let's kind of simulate and say, why is it that this guy actually got such a low score? Let's go back to our simulation here. Okay. So let's go back to our same example. You're hiring someone for a director level position. The first question, a basic question, you got that wrong. The second question, an easier question. So this was a 50th percentile question. This is a 30th percentile or 25th percentile question. You got that wrong. If you are hiring someone for a director level position, what would your judgment be? If you're hiring someone for a director level position and he got a 50th percentile and a 30th percentile, not hired. And is the test wrong to really think this guy is not a 90th percentile student? No, the test is absolutely correct to think at this point. This is how you as a human would behave as well. So for student 2, what the test does is gives the next question, which is a 15 percentiles question. The student gets that right. 22nd percentile question, the student gets that right. 30th percentile question, the student gets that right. 40th percentile question, the student gets that right. 50th percentile question or 655th student gets it right, and so on and so forth. Now student 1 or case 1, remember, got the first 4 questions right. He was already getting some of the most challenging questions and he continued to get those right or so. All right. So the test, the way it behaved, was very similar to how a natural human would behave. Now, this guy did reach difficult questions over there, but then he started making mistakes again. All right. Both these students were e-GMAT students. And so this guy over here on the real GMAT got a V44. This guy here got a V35. So the mock test did a really good job estimating their ability. All right. So the thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that the GMAT is not worried about your accuracy. It's actually evaluating your abilities over there. Now, how does it do that? So we got the ESRs of both of them. Student 1 had, 97 percentile. This was his ESR, more or less, where you can look at his ability scores in SC, CR, and RC. Student 2 was a 65th percentile. These were his ability scores in SCCR and RC. Now, when you look at these students through the lens of ability, do they look very different to you? Do they look different? Oh, that's a V44 guy. I'm sorry. This was the V44 guy. This was the V35 guy. I should have changed the numbers. But looking at them through the lens of ability, do they look very different? Yes. Not really. There's no difference between an 87 percentile and 59 percentile ability in RC. That's a huge difference. 95th percentile ability and 66th percentile ability in CR. Oh, yes. So this is how the GMAT looks at you. It doesn't look at the accuracy data or how many questions you answered correctly, but it does look at this. Now, someone asked a question about the GRE. I think it was Dimple who asked this question. Does the GRE work the same way? Somewhat. Not exactly that. On the GRE, you actually have sections that are adaptive in the sense that you give a section 1, you get a certain score. Section 1 by itself is not adaptive, but then the score that you get in section 1 determines the difficulty level of questions that you get in let's say, the second quant section. Okay. So it means if you make, so the question is, if you make mistakes in the initial question, it is almost impossible to get to a good score. Okay. Here is the deal. How many of you know soccer? Just yes or no as a game. How many of you know soccer? No? Have never heard the word soccer? Most of you have. It's the world's most popular sport. Football, yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, I sometimes forget, having lived in America, it's called football everywhere. So would Ronaldo, what's the chance that Ronaldo is going to miss an empty penalty? So, which means there's no goalkeeper there, and 0, next to 0. Yes, right? Very, 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 very low. In the same way, if you have a high ability, there's a very low chance you're going to make a mistake on the first question. All right, and I'm going to really discuss that. So for those of you who are really saying, if I get the first question wrong, there's no way to come back. The question really is, a lot of people think you win the exam or you ace the exam by figuring out how you perform during the test. On the GMAT, you ace the exam through your preparation. You can screw it up by how you perform during the test, but you will never ace it by how you perform. You ace the exam during your preparation. I just want you to remember that. You can mess it up if you behave differently during the test, but if by behaving differently, but you can't ace the test. The test is designed that way. Okay. But again, the same takeaway overall. Now, a lot of people ask, okay, if the GMAT measures ability, what kind of abilities does it measure? So it measures 2 abilities on the quant side, which is algebra and geometry, and as well as arithmetic, and then 3 abilities on the verbal side, and you can see SCCR and RC, or sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. There are a few points to note over here. Each of these subsections is independent, which means how you do in SC has absolutely no impact on the difficulty level of questions that you would get on CR. Or in other words, you can score a 0 percentile in SC and score a 97 percentile in CR. We've seen those score reports. Okay. Each subsection has an identical weight. We simulated upwards of 4,000 ESRs. We did a regression analysis around the ability scores, and the ability scores, one, accounted for 99, the R square for that ability score was 99.78. Anyone who understands R square and regression, how good is 99.78 R square? Anyone who does data? Really good. 99.78 R square. Okay. So what it tells you, it's not correlation. It says your ability scores account for 99.78% of your GMAT score, or practically all of it. I'm sure if we added 10 or 1,000 data points more, we would get to close to 99.95 or so, but who cares? 99.78 is pretty good. In the same regression, on the verbal side, we got almost identical weights. So 0.31, 0.33, 0.334, 0.326 or something. So, which means that each subsection had almost identical weights. Again, for those of you who think, hey, RC is more important than CR because because CR has fewer questions and RC has more questions and SC has the most questions. No, that isn't the case. It's just that to get a reliable estimate of your CR ability, the test only needs 10 questions, but it has the same weight. Okay. So just to really tell you that this is backed by data. The third piece is you need a targetability needs subsection. And this targetability needs to be mated to your natural ability. Why? Because if you want to get to a V40, there are about 40 ways to get to a V40. You have to figure out which is the best way for you. And we're going to look at how we go about doing that. Another piece that's really important and which is something that people forget is how you build ability needs subsection is identical, which means what do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2, what do you do in step 3 is identical. Or in other words, if you have a 20th percentile ability in SC and a 20th percentile ability in arithmetic, the process of going from that 20th percentile to that 90th percentile in SC and in arithmetic is going to be identical for you. Okay, because it's about a learning process. It doesn't matter whether it's SC or arithmetic or algebra or reading comprehension. Okay. But then the other piece which is really important is your starting points are going to be different. And that's where measuring ability right at the very beginning is absolutely important. Okay. So then the next question is, once you understand acing the GMATs about building ability, the next question that you have to ask is, what are my target ability scores in these subsections? So a lot of you ask this question, what is my target GMAT score? What you fail to ask this question is, what are my target ability scores? And this is something that you need to ask, because unless and until you ask this, you will have no idea of the challenge that lies in front of you, or you have no idea of how to go about even beginning your preparation. You might be beginning your preparation with the wrong metric out there. Just a show of hands. How many of you were aware that you have to think about a target ability? I'm going to put in a yes no poll here in each of these subsections. Let's just put in a yes no poll here. Let's reopen the poll. Just a yes no poll. How many of you were aware? I don't want you to type it out. It's just easier for you to put in here. All right, but 68% of you or 70% of you were not aware. You have to think about a target ability. Otherwise, you can't really figure it out as to what your target needs to be. Your last attempt was Q50, V25. We're going to actually use a study plan that will help you improve from that. We're going to give you an example of that. Now, the same study plan may not apply to you, but the same template might apply to you. All right. So with that, again, acing the GMATs about building ability, and all of these other things are important, but pale, they're important pales when compared to building ability. So this wasn't the study plan that I was talking about. It just happens to be an example that seems to fit the bill. Here's an example of a student who improved from a 520 to a 710. Now, the reason why I have this example is not to actually say, hey, here's an e-GMAT student, look at this, how well he did, but to really tell you on the GMAT, you guys can make mistakes. And the reason why I'm showing this is because you can download his ESR. So I'm going to use multiple success stories. This guy is number 5. You can click on that, download his ESR if you want this, his ESR as well. Now, the first thing that I want you to notice is his verbal score. He improved from a 15th percentile in verbal to a 91st percentile. His verbal score is composed of these abilities, excellent ability in SC and above average or good abilities in CR and RC. Okay, so your GMAT score, the verbal score and the quant score are composed of abilities. The second thing that I want you to really show is how he did, how he performed across these subsections. So in the first 2 subsections on the GMAT, this is the 41 question format again. In the first 10 questions, when the difficulty level of questions wasn't as high, he got pretty much all of them right. The next group, when the difficulty increased, he got majority of them right, 71% accuracy. But then this is when the GMAT was only serving him hard questions. He made a ton of mistakes. Overall, he made about 12 mistakes out of 41. He was still able to get to a V40, which is 91st percentile. The point here being that on the GMAT, you can make mistakes. That's really important for you to know, as long as those mistakes are on hard questions. I mean, Let's go back to the same example. If you want to hire a director of operation or a director of marketing, and you ask that person 8 hard questions and the guy answers 5 or 6 of them really well, what do you think about it? What do you think about that candidate? Let me repeat my statement. You're looking for a director of marketing, the same example. 8 hard questions, the guy gets 5 or 6 correct. Is that guy a good candidate? Yeah, it's sufficient. I mean, the other ones he can be trained on, but the guy comes with a lot of potential, right? Is the message that the first quarter is more important and thus we invest more time? No. And we're going to answer these questions. Again, I can see these questions, but again, this is how you think, this is how the GMAT thinks as well. So even when you make mistakes here on hard questions, the test says it's okay. These are hard questions. Anyhow, a majority of people don't get them right. He's still getting more than half of these correctly. He's a really good candidate. All right. The next takeaway is you can make mistakes as long as they are on hard questions. All right. So here are the 3 questions that you have. Do the first 10 questions matter? Should you approach them differently? Should you spend more time on the first question? Now, I want you to answer these questions as these are 3 different questions. So again, don't answer them yet. Let me give you a format that you should use to answer them. If your answer to the first question is yes, you should type in Y. If the answer to the second question is yes, then you should type them Y. Type it Y, Y, Y if you want to say 3 yeses. If you want to say Y and N, yes, no, no, then you say Y and N. So again, so answer each one of these 3 questions over here. I'm going to broadcast results. So what do you think are the answers here? Y N N, Y N N, Y Y N, okay, Y N Y, N N N, okay. The way I would, if I were you, the way I would answer those questions is that I would think about hiring that director. All right. You can see how people have responded, and I love this participation. I want to thank you guys for participating. I'll tell you what my answers are. Do the first 10 questions matter? Yes, they do. Why? Because in the same way in the interview, if you answer the basic questions wrong, you might not even get hard questions. There's a possibility. Should you approach them differently? Absolutely not. Should you spend more time on the first 10 questions? That would be catastrophic. Okay. That's something which is really important for you to understand. Do the first 10 matter? Yes. Yes, they do, but that's immaterial because every question matters. All right. So let me explain why that is the case. Now remember the statement that I said, you don't ace the GMAT during the test, you ace the GMAT during your preparation. You can fail on the GMAT during the test. The same thing applies over here. Let's say you are a 90th percentile student, all right? The very definition of a 90th percentile student, which means during your preparation, you've prepared enough that you are now a 90th percentile student. You've still not taken the test. The very definition of a 90th percentile student is that on medium level difficulty, your accuracy would be 90%, which means your likelihood of getting a medium question wrong is 10%, okay? Now, I want to ask you this. If this is your natural likelihood, you get the first question, should you behave any differently? You're a 90th percentile guy? No, you're not going to get that question wrong anyway. That's the very definition of who you are. Okay? Similarly, this is the definition of a 90th percentile guy. For medium hard questions, his accuracy is 80%. For hard questions, his accuracy is 65%. All right. Let's go back to hiring that director of marketing. You look at a candidate, he's sitting in front of you, he's there for the position of director of marketing. You ask that guy a super hard question as the first question, and the guy fumbles on it. What judgment would you have on that? Let me repeat my question. You're hiring for a director of marketing. The first question is a super hard question and the candidate fumbles on it. What judgment would you have? You might fumble, that's okay. No, you won't pass the judgment. You expect, when you're asking a super hard question, you expect people to fail. Right? You'll give that person, you won't even pass a judgment. You'd say, okay, maybe I should go slightly easier, but I'm not going to reject that candidate. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that majority of the times, the first question, but 80% of the times, the first question is a medium difficulty question. All right. And you're going to get that question right 90% of the time. All right. There's probably a 5 to 7% likelihood that the first question would be a hard question. And if it so happens that you fumble on it, then the test doesn't make a judgment on you because the test knows it's a hard question. It behaves like a human does. Now, let me ask this. What happens when you give special treatment to something that is very, very fundamental to you? Does that 10% still apply? No, it doesn't. Anyone play sport over here? Anyone play sport over here? Anyone plays cricket here? Just yes, okay. Yes, a lot of you. Now I'm going to ask this one question now. Think about it. You'll have to think into, go back a few years to answer this question. Anyone who plays cricket here, remember the time when they were conscious about, going to bat and you got a full toss and you actually got out on a full toss because you were conscious. Has that happened? If you're conscious about something and you go, yes, that's the same thing that happens to a 90th percentile guy when that person gives special treatment to anything. Okay. If you are a 90th percentile guy, you're not going to make mistakes on a medium question. That's the definition of who you are. Okay. So, should you treat the first 10 questions any different? No, you should not. All right. Good. Bottom line is, if in your prep you get to that 90th percentile, you're likely to answer the first 10 correctly anyway. If in the unlikely scenario you get a hard question as one of the first 10s, the test doesn't make a judgment on you. Why? Because you're supposed to make a mistake on that. Okay. Does that address your first 10 query? Any more queries on the first 10? Now, a lot of people think I'm going to spend more time on the first 10. That's absolutely wrong too. Why? Because what happens when you spend more time? You go back, check your answers. Anyone over here who's, while solving a simple question, marked the question correctly, then said, let me just double check my answers, and then has marked the question incorrectly? Yeah, don't do that. Why should you approach the test any differently than how you approached your mock? You shouldn't. The test should be just like a mock test, or you should approach your mock test the way you approach the test. All right? Here are students who've scored a 780 on the GMAT. These guys made mistakes. Even these guys made mistakes in the first 10. All right? The question is not about the first 10. The question is, do you make mistakes on medium or hard questions? And that ability is something that you build during practice, not during the test. That's not something that you figure out during the test. This is something that you ensure during practice, and that's something where we look at your scholarinium stats and tell you whether you're ready for the test or not. Okay. You can actually go watch their interviews. Here are the bottom two links number 6 and 7. Two people, V47, V48. You can attempt this. Even these guys made mistakes, a couple of mistakes in the first 10. The thing really was, they did not make mistakes on medium difficulty questions. Okay. Really important piece. The key thing is focus on building ability. Approach all questions on the real test the way you do in practice. Do not change anything. I mean, a lot of people mess their test up because they say, I'm going to do something special to enhance my score. Don't do that, please. Okay. Anyone over here who has done this? Who's approached the test in a special way, in a way that they've not approached their mocks and have been royally screwed because of it? Yes, don't do that. You don't ace the GMAT during the test. You ace it in your preparation. Okay. Oh, it happened to me in IIT JEE too. Trust me. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let's not talk about IIT JEE. It's a very painful topic for me. So yeah, but those are lessons that you should take and never repeat. It's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to repeat a mistake. Okay. Now we talked about subsection being independent. We talked about each subsection having an equal weight. Let's talk about the targetability in each subsection. Really important piece, and that's where that personalized study plan comes in. Okay. So with that, I want to ask this question to you. What do you think a study plan does? Or in other words, what is a study plan to you? What is a study plan to you? Something that gives you direction, gives you structure, a strategy for achieving the goal, a schedule to study, okay. You know what to do. Make a roadmap. Safety, strategy, structure, and hope. All right. Okay. A study plan doesn't give you hope. Case studies give you hope, by the way. But there are the other 2 points there. Something that helps to eliminate procrastination. Yes, that's very true. Let's see more. Plan according to your weakness and strength. Leave scope for revision. Target your weakness. Okay. That's good. So a study plan does all of this, but a study plan is much more than this. And this is something that I'm going to explain to you. And for that one student who say, I'm stuck over here, if you wait 30 minutes, you'll know why you're stuck. Not exactly why you are stuck, but you'll have a good enough answer to tell you why you've been failing. Okay. So a study plan is all of what you've written, coming back to our original discussion, but it's much more, and I'm going to demonstrate that with an example. A study plan essentially gives you a roadmap to your success. It's really important, and a study plan needs to be there on your wall, which you need to see it every day if you want to ace the GMAT. Okay. It answers 3 questions, and you will see the word I in each one of these 3 questions. It tells you how will you reach to your target GMAT score, and I being very important, and because of the personalized nature of it. The second thing it does is it tells you how much time you need, not someone else, not your friend, not your brother, but you need to reach your target GMAT score. And the third thing that it answers is what kind of studying do I need to do for each aspect of the GMAT, or in other words, where do I put that time? All right. And yes, it is applicable. It's kind of very similar to how you excel at anything, whether it's work, whether it's sports, preparing and excelling on the GMAT is no different than excelling in anything. And a lot of people really think, hey, people from IITs or from good colleges do very well on the GMAT. And yes, they do, right? But it's not because they are smart. It's because they know the process of excelling. And this is what I'm going to talk about in this primarily. I'm not going to teach you SVCR or RC. We have other webinars for that, or geometry, algebra, or so. I'm going to teach you the process of excelling. This is what this session is about. And I'm going to teach the same to you in the context of the GMAT, but you can apply this to anything. by the way. Okay, so we're going to look at two students, Ayush and Rafaela. We're going to look at how their study plans are different. One's with a starting score of 600, the others with a starting score of 670. Okay, and both of them successful students. So Ayush actually ended up scoring a 750. He's currently studying at Columbia. Actually, he just graduated from Columbia. Rafaela is currently studying at Harvard Business School. She ended up with a 730. Okay. We're going to really look at how do you build that in 3 easy steps, especially if you're an e-GMATer. We have an AI-driven tool that does the job for you. Okay, we're going to start with Rafaela. I think that's what we have. And we're going to look at how she improved from 602 to 730. Now, if you're reading this carefully, you can see the, let me make sure I change the color here to, let's just make it yellow. You can, these are our starting scores. This was her ending score. Okay, so let's get back to black. Good. All right. So the first thing you've got to understand is understand what that starting score is composed of. What are the abilities that 600 is composed of, or that Q36 or a V36 is composed of. And for Rafaela, this is what she did. She actually took a Sigma X mock, and for her, she had really good abilities in SC and CR, but really bad starting ability in RC. And on arithmetic, she was really poor, but in algebra geometry, she's a bit more promising. She's at the 50th percentile ability. So these were her initial data points. And then what she did was she put this data in our PSP tool, and so the PSP tool generated what her target abilities need to be. And again, the session is recorded, so you will get the recording of this. So it optimized on SC and CR. Then it says, okay, to improve your verbal score, you've got to get to a high ability in RC. And then what the tool did was it said, hey, since you have a starting ability, a higher starting ability in algebra geometry, we're going to optimize on that, and we're going to fill the gap with arithmetic. So where you see the target abilities in arithmetic and algebra geometry are very, very different. Now, can someone infer what does this mean for Rafaela when it comes to studying for arithmetic versus studying for algebra geometry? If your target ability in arithmetic is 57 percentile, but your target ability in in algebra geometry is higher. Would you want me to do the last slide? On the last slide, the last slide shows us starting abilities. This is something that you get when you take a Sigma X mock. It's just numbers, it's just data that is there. I'd be happy to answer any question. Again, you're not required to remember that. Okay. Someone says practice easy medium questions in arithmetic, but practice medium hard in geometry and algebra. In algebra and geometry, we're going to look at that. Revisit concepts. Okay, that's good. Yes. So the takeaway from this, if you're aiming for a 57 percentile in arithmetic but a 83rd percentile algebra geometry, the takeaway is that when it comes to arithmetic, I don't need to answer the hardest questions correctly in arithmetic. In fact, I shouldn't even attempt the hardest question in arithmetic. In algebra geometry, I need to be able to answer the hardest questions because that's a really high thing. That's just the takeaway. What you need to study is something that we will see. Okay. Then what it does is it says it looks at the delta between your starting ability and your target ability, and it generates how long do you need to put in, what kind of effort do you need to put in over here. Someone talked about procrastinating. Once you know the effort that you need to put in each subsection, it actually avoids that, number one. Number two, it gives you certainty as to how much you need to prepare. For example, she knows given how many hours she was going to put in during the weekday and during the weekend, she knew that she needed a dedicated 2 weeks for arithmetic, another dedicated 2 weeks for algebra geometry, a dedicated 2.5 weeks for RC, but not a whole lot of time for SC and CR. Okay, that certainty, helps address procrastination. It also gives you that that piece over here, it'll say, I can now see how my prep is. In fact, I recommend students to put this chart on their wall because we generate this chart for you. So then the question really is, what should you study? And to do that, I'm going to introduce a theory of learning. Okay. So at e-GMAT, we follow what we call as 3 stages of learning. The first stage of learning is where you learn concepts and application. In this stage, if your starting ability is low, you get to the core e-GMAT courses, you learn concepts, you learn application, you get feedback that's personalized using technology on whether you're learning concepts right and whether you're able to apply them correctly or not. Once you've proven you can do this and you prove to the platform, you then go into mastering application phase. And any e-GMAT student out here who can really tell me what does mastering application mean? What term do we have for mastering application internally? What do we do during this phase? Cementing. Yes, we take cementing quizzes during this phase. And then the next piece you do is refining to perfection. All right. So how does your ability improve to this? When you're learning concepts and application, you improve up to the 55th to 60th percentile. Once you've mastered application, which means you've gone through the medium and hard cementing quizzes over here, you improve up to the 70th or 75th percentile. And then when you get to the refinement phase, that's when you improve to the 90th percentile. Okay. Now, very important. Remember these percentiles because you're going to map this to Raffaella. Okay. Again, guys, that particular question that you're talking about, let's kind of address it slightly later. It disturbs the flow. So now then the question really is, we're talking about when you're starting to study right now. Okay. So what we do is we kind of really tell you what do you study, what do you not study, and as such, as per targetability, where is it that you're already there or you don't need to do. So when you think about SC for Raffaella, she already was at her targetability. We validated that. So all she needed to do was to maintain that ability. That was it. Remember the 3 stages: learn concepts and methods, master application, refine to perfection, and maintain. For those of you, for that particular person who asked, this is what you need to do. And that's where you would ask you'd take the test readiness quizzes in terms of maintaining performance. Okay. But when it comes to RC, she needed to start from the very basics. When it comes to arithmetic and algebra, she needed to start from the very basics. Then she needed to get to the master application stage. And then in algebra, she needed to refine to perfection because she was aiming for that high ability score. Okay. Does that make sense? If you are more like Raffaella, can you see that study plan making sense? Yes, that's what a study plan does. It tells you what you need to do. Now, the problem that a lot of people have is they say their starting ability is lower than 50th percentile, and they basically start practicing questions. What if you have problems everywhere? Yes, you could. If you have a starting score of 400, you could have problems everywhere. And at that point, you would just start with this piece over here. You have to do that. And that's kind of where you need a longer time to ace the GMAT. Where can you find this table? You can actually write to the CSC team to generate this table. But this essentially comes out of this. Once you get to the PSP, it explains to you the next video, if you watch it completely, explains to you exactly this process. Okay. Now let's look at Ayush's account. Okay. So yeah, if you want that table, go to the PSP, watch that video, you'll see that. And someone has actually shared that calendar as well. Is the proprietary mock a must to judge the starting ability? No, it's not a must. If you have an ESR, which is a recent ESR, which is less than a month old, we can use that, absolutely. So Ayush, again, 670 starting score. These are his starting abilities. We already talked about it. Really good in quant, really good in RC. Okay. So for him, the target abilities were he had to excel in SC and RC. and then do really good in CR and maintain his ability in quant. Now, again, these were completely different timelines that were generated for him, which is what you can see. You can see, okay, not a whole lot of time in algebra and arithmetic, or on the quant side. He's an engineer, so that definitely was an advantage. Even though he was at 80th percentile, there's still about 8 days of dedicated RC because we wanted him to optimize his ability in RC. And then you can see about 3 dedicated weeks in SC and about 2 dedicated weeks in CR. Okay. So again, the same 3 stages of learning apply. If you're lower than 55th percentile, you have to get to learn concepts and applications. If you are in that point where you're around that 55th to 60th percentile, you can start with cementing and then so on and so forth. So over here for Ayush, this is what it was. You know, in RC, he needed to master application and refine to perfection. In SC and CR, he needed to do everything else, which is very, very different from what Rafaela did. But in algebra and arithmetic, it was primarily maintenance and refining to perfection, nothing else. Okay. Again, if you are Ayush, you need this clarity. Very, very important. Okay. So yes, it's just if you can't see the slide that you're commenting, just join again. If you're on a cellular connection, then this would happen. Now let's compare Rafaela and Ayush. All right. Ayush needed to spend 2.7 dedicated weeks in SC. Rafaela only needed a day in SC. Ayush needed 11 to 12 days in CR. Rafaela just needed 1 day in CR. In RC, Ayush needed about 40% of the time that Rafaela did. And in quant, that's kind of where Rafaela had to spend all the time. Okay. When it comes to what they're studying, when it comes to arithmetic and algebra, Rafaela had to start from the very basics. Ayush had to just maintain his performance. In RC, Rafaela had to start from the very basics. Ayush just had to maintain his performance. And when it comes to SC and CR, Rafaela had to maintain a performance and Ayush had to do very different things. Now, can you see that personalized study plan does a lot more? Can you see that? Guys, can you see that the personalized study plan does a lot more? Yes, a few more yeses would be good. Yes, thank you. And this is what you need to have. This is just the beginning of your preparation. We've not even started studying, but you need to have that clarity even before you begin. Why? Because once you have that clarity, you can see the challenge in front of you. You can see the metrics you need to hit. Okay. Now, it's really important. I know most of you are aiming for that high score. What's the week's duration mean? It means the number of hours that you told the platform you're willing to invest. In the platform, you can change the number of hours on a daily basis, or you can really say, I'm going to spend 2 hours per day on every weekday and 5 hours per day on every weekend. You can do all of that. Yes, it's on the e-GMAT learning platform or so. Krishna says, is it okay to start from stage 1 rather than stage 2? Even my ability is 81. Absolutely okay, Krishna. I mean, people do that. I'm surprised that people do that, but yes, I mean, there are certain people who want to do it that way. And the beauty of this is, if your starting ability is high, because most of our learning activities in stage 1 have a diagnostic, you would further get the ability to really say, if you do well in the pre-assessment quiz, the platform will tell you, hey, you don't need to watch this concept because you've done well in the diagnostic. I find the time estimate is not so accurate. Is it too long if I took 3.5 months for all of quant section and reporting point is? No, it's not too long. Here is the piece, right? Remember this. How many of you, this assumes a certain thing. We assume a diligent student, which means you're going to study stuff every day. Okay, that's a very big assumption. So for you, if you started with a Q32 is what? 25th percentile on quant, and so you have to be able to put in dedicated effort every day. So I have to look at your platform to really just say, what was it? We internally within our customer success team, we have this thing called a diligence factor. So what was your diligence factor or so? So yeah, do write to the support team. Can you study 2 topics simultaneously? Is it okay? Not if you're studying 2 hours a day. It's absolutely not okay. If you're studying 7 hours a day, it's absolutely okay, or 6 hours a day. Anything above 5 hours a day, you can study 2 topics. But if you're studying fewer than 5 hours a day, then no. No. Remember, you want to achieve excellence. What's the GMAT score you're aiming for? Or what's the SC ability you're aiming for? What's the SC ability you're aiming for, or number properties ability you're aiming for? If you're aiming for that 90th percentile ability, I want to make sure you recognize that. You want to be among the top 10 percentile of students, which means you want to be better than half the native speakers out there. And to get to that 90th percentile ability in SC, you need dedication. It's not just about spending time, it's about spending that mental bandwidth. Is that clear to the person who said, can I study 10 to 12 hours? Or can I study as verbal and quant simultaneously? Is that clear? You're aiming for 90th percentile or 99th percentile. You can't say I'm going to study SC for an hour and I'm going to study CR for an hour. It's not just about studying. It's about internalizing things. Okay. So if let's say your starting ability in SC is 25th percentile and your starting ability in number properties is 18th percentile, then which means you're going to absorb a lot of new concepts, which means if you studied SC for an hour, then you studied quant, and then after that, during your regular day-to-day things, would you still be thinking about the concept that you studied today in SC, or would you be thinking about the quant concept? You don't know that. Okay. Which is why when you are in stage 1 in one concept, you should only do stage 1 in that one subsection. Now, if you're studying SC and you're solving a couple of quant problems in the test readiness phase, that's absolutely okay. But don't do stage 1 for 2 subsections simultaneously. It just is a recipe for disaster. Okay, I'm going to show you some results, but 15 minutes from now, just to really tell you why this process works. And if someone else has told you something else, why you should not listen to them. Is there something as studying too much? Example, 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours? Yes. And in my opinion, anything more than 6 is too much. It's just your brain's not ready to absorb new information. You would be wasting resources. You would be, piling up frustration. Okay. Now, hopefully that part is clear now. Don't do stage 1 for 2 subsections simultaneously. Do not do it. It's just a recipe for disaster. You can do stage 1 for one and test readiness for another, or refinement for another. That's absolutely okay. Now let's talk about why you should make or break your chance of securing an admit. Why that's 730 is really important. And I'm also going to tell you why that GMAT score is also not the only thing that you should worry about, or it doesn't guarantee this. So this year, because we have thousands of successful students, we actually did some research. Why? Because people really think about it and say, okay, why should I aim for a higher score? And this research involved a lot of international students. And so we got data from 500 real students. And this is real students where we knew their backgrounds, we knew their GMAT scores, we knew which schools they applied to. So this entire process took us about a month, and with 2 resources, kind of following up with people on LinkedIn, in addition to looking at all the data that we had internally, asking them which schools did you apply to, which schools did you secure an admit from, which one actually did you get into, and which ones did you get a scholarship from. Okay. So what we found when it comes to M7 schools, the Magnificent 7, okay, we found that out of these 500 students, about 260 applied to them. And out of those who got in, 60% of them actually had a score of 740 or higher. All right. We then looked at what were the admit rates for these. Okay. The admit rates for For folks who got a 740 or higher were 28%, which means even when you get a 740 or higher, there was a 72% chance that you could get rejected. However, that was more than twice the admit rate for people who got to that score of, who were in that 710 to 730 range. And let me just make sure I choose a more neutral color, who were in that 710 to 730 range. So yes, a 740 or higher does increase your chances of getting to an M7 school substantially, but it's not a guarantee. Then we talked about scholarships, okay? And you can really toggle this button over here. This data is on our website. You go to Admits and Scholarships portal, you can do that. Okay. So here's the other piece which is very interesting, and this is primarily for US schools. European schools don't offer as much scholarship. Okay. 6 out of 10 students who were admitted to an M7 or a T20 school, these are people who got an admit, got a scholarship if your GMAT score was 740 or higher. The other piece that was there were many full rides as well in this. So again, the GMAT score not only helps you with admits and increases your chances substantially, but it also increases your chances to get a scholarship. Yes, there's a very high Indian ratio. About 70% of all students here were Indians. Yes. Okay. Then the third question that we asked was, how do scholarships multiply when you go from that 740 to that 760? And this is only comparing 740 and 760. And we have 56 people in the 740 group and about, I think, 58, 59 people in the 760 or higher group. So this is 760 to 800. This is just 740 as a single score over here. And what we found was 760 scorers got in substantially more money than 740 scorers, 760 or higher scorers, I would say. And so essentially those 20 points were worth about $35,000 worth of incremental scholarship money. Okay, really important. And this is really useful data because many people, once they get to a 740, including the person actually who did this research, who was a former e-GMATer and is now studying at Keenan Flagler, he actually had a 740 and he was lazy enough to get to a 760 despite my pushing him. And once he looked at this data and he said, man, I made a mistake. Okay, do you apply for a scholarship after the GMAT? No, these are all merit-based scholarships. Even if you are Mukesh Ambani's son, if you have a 760, you'd get a scholarship. Just because these are merit-based scholarships, your background, your current financial condition scenario doesn't matter. Okay. So again, bottom line, really important to get to get that 730 or higher score if you want to get to a top B school. And again, you're asking about questions from should I study multiple subsections or not, and so on and so forth. And then again, how many of you have really said received advice from people saying, hey, you should not study just one thing, but you should study multiple things over here? When you've talked to other experts, they've said, don't just do one subsection, always study multiple subsections. Yes. Ask how many scores have they delivered. That's very important. And when I say this, I back everything with data. This is data from January of 2021 to August of 2021 of all GMAT Club partners, and we've delivered actually more 700 plus scores than everyone combined. In fact, we recently released a video where we talked about how we just essentially broke the record of how many 700 plus scores are possible in overall. So if you click on this link, e-GMAT shadows GMAT Club records, in mid-October we reached the 200 mark, which was a mark that was never achieved by any test prep company on GMAT Club. Okay, so any GMAT Club partner, this number was never achieved in the history of GMAT Club, and this was twice as high as what was the number before. Okay, And you can look at this. So bottom line is, when I say this works, and this is the reason why we've delivered way more success than everyone else has, despite the fact that when you look at the other three companies, they have about 3 times as many students as we do. So a lot of people say, hey, you have more students. No, yes, maybe more students than GMAT Whiz, but when you compare all of this, Target Test Prep alone has more students than we do. But when you combine them, even then they have 3 times as many students. Okay. Not only that, a lot of you know us for our verbal prowess. What you guys don't probably know us yet is that since we released Quant 2.0, we've actually delivered way more Q49 plus scores as well. So in 2021, we have delivered more Q49 plus scores than everyone else combined. And yes, there's a certain bias in this because, you know, a lot of our students are from the Indian background, but then so are students who belong to these companies. I mean, they have the exact same pool of students that we do. Okay. So again, when I give you and the recommendations that you would get from this webinar, they're going to be slightly different from what you've heard elsewhere. The reason why they're different is because they deliver results, and you can compare our results to the results that anyone else has delivered, and ask them these numbers for these numbers. Okay, which is one of the other reasons why we have more success journeys on YouTube than anyone else has. I mean, this year alone, we've uploaded upwards of 80 such journeys. You know, most of the other companies have failed to do more than upload about more than 10 or so. Anyone over here a subscriber of our YouTube channel? Just a simple yes, no. And for those of you who are, when you see, have you seen those journeys? I mean, they pop up once or twice a week regularly, right? And they are there, so you can really see how people struggle. I mean, these are not just people saying, hey, e-GMAT's great. This is the people walking us through their journey and saying, where did they struggle? No comparison to Wiseco anywhere. I don't think you should do. I mean, I don't know anything about Wiseco. I'll just be very clear about the success rate that they have. But I can tell you from a platform standpoint, you know, it's you're comparing, you know, a smartphone to really a feature phone. Okay. Acing the GMAT is not about the expert. I mean, Wiseco, I think, has good experts. Acing the GMAT is about a process. Okay. So that's very, very important. And again, if you want to just compare us to Wiseco, you go to our website, spend about 15 minutes watching videos, and then look at, does Wiseco even do that? And you'll have that answer. It's the same way you compare a smartphone to a feature phone. Can I browse the web properly? Forget about the outcomes. Just even really say, do you even have the prerequisites for the outcome? Both would do phone calls though. I'm going to answer this question, then I'm going to go forward because I want to finish the webinar. So is there any plan to release live classes for e-GMAT? No, there isn't, because we did that last year, and e-GMATers don't like live classes. I'll be very frank, because frankly, once you get into the e-GMAT platform, you get used to personalized feedback. And when you get into a live classroom, you really say, man, I'm wasting my time. Might as well spend time on the platform. It's much better used. Why? Because it's personalized. I mean, you go to a live class. So we had this thing. We spent a lot of time and money in building live classes, and we found people didn't like it. They said, hey, we don't need. There's no benefit of live classes. If you're an e-GMATer, you know this. Okay. But does it mean there is no live interaction? Absolutely not. You write to us, we record a video telling you where you faltered, why you're faltering, what you should do next. And sometimes when you get stuck, one of the things that we want to do, and you will see us doing sometime very soon in the future, is where, you know, when you're in that cementing stage, we'll introduce a couple of personalized classes for you, which we won't charge you for, by the way. And yeah, but that would be useful to you. Not everyone will get invited. Only people who are in between the medium and hard cementing stages will get invited. Only people who are in the test readiness stages would get invited to the test readiness classes. Yes, but other than that, live classes aren't useful. You don't get personalized feedback. There's very little data that comes out of it. And again, to get X out, you spend 3X the amount of time versus what you would spend on an online platform. So there's no plan to do this. And frankly, in 2021, you shouldn't be talking about plain vanilla live classes anyway. Okay. So how do you build ability? All right. And that's something which is really important. And I think now you guys are really good about these three parts. I want to just emphasize on the three stages of learning and the importance of those three stages. Why? Because once you have a personalized study plan, it's about executing on it, and executing on that personalized study plan is essentially. Actually, let me just go back. I want to say this. How many of you still use Yellow Pages to find an address? Just a yes, no piece. How many of you use Yellow Pages? What do you use to find an address? What do you use? Niet. Okay. Google Maps. No. So if you don't use Yellow Pages, then don't go to plain vanilla live classes, because that's like using Yellow Pages to find an address. Just to draw a parallel for you. That's how archaic that is. Okay. So, stages of learning and how it leads to ability. Again, I've put in the stuff over here. You can see the ability markers here. Really important. Why is this important? Why is this important? Because a lot of us, we are here, and what we do is practice questions. How many of you do that? Said, man, I know my ability is 30th percentile. Let me go solve questions on GMAT Club. I'm going to improve my ability. How many of you do that? I'm going to improve my ability by solving questions. Don't say no. There are lots of people who've done this. And again, I know that because otherwise you won't be here in this webinar. Okay. The reason why people are here is because they don't improve. There are very few people who are at 710 who are in this webinar, by the way. It's people who are at lower ability. Yes, it's one of the worst things to do. The person who asks this question, hey, I'm stuck at 660 or 610 with this quant and this verbal score. The reason you're stuck at it is because the ointment or the solution that you're applying to the problem that you're trying to solve is the wrong thing. Depending on the stage of learning, A, you have to follow a process, and B, you have to achieve metrics before you even go into that practicing mode. The only place where you practice is here. Even when you are here, yes, you do practice, but it's not blind practice. Here it is cementing. You don't do, it has to be very, very specific practice. Okay. Okay. So just to elaborate this more, I'm going to compare how two people, so that's one piece. The second piece is the approach that people have with regards to learning and how they look at this over here. Okay. So I'm going to compare two students. One is at 60th percentile and the other one is at 90th percentile. Both of these students actually have a starting ability of 30th percentile. Both of them spend 40 hours learning SC. One of the other things that I want to really tell you about when it comes to the GMAT is, now, learning the GMAT isn't rocket science. And the GMAT's a great equalizer. Why? Because it's not a quant test or a verbal test. So unlike the CAT or unlike some of the other competitive exams that you may have heard of, GMAT's a very conquerable test. Why? Because as long as you're logical, you can ace the GMAT. Okay. So everyone has a very similar capability to ace the GMAT. Now, the reason why some people don't ace the GMAT, and this also includes people who are e-GMATers. Okay, there are some e-GMATers out there who do it that way, which is why not every e-GMATer is successful, is because of how they approach the test. Okay, so again, two students, 60th percentile and 90th percentile, and I'm going to really talk about how they look at the SC subsection. Okay, now remember, 90th percentile is about achieving perfection. Why? Is you're in the top 10 percentile of students out there. I'm going to emphasize that point again and again and again. Now the 60th percentile student, this is the person who achieved 60th percentile after spending those 40 hours, says that acing GMAT SC is about mastering concepts in these error types. As long as I know the grammar rules in these error types, I'm golden and I'm going to go and solve questions. When it comes to solving questions, they really look at a question where they say, okay, what's the difference in answer choices? Let me just quickly do a scanning. And if I can't find that scanning difference, I'm going to start thinking about meaning. When they're learning, they actually quickly go through that theory. They spend about 10 to 12 hours learning the theory, and then they go on practicing questions. When you look at this time spent learning, 30% of that time is spent learning, 70% of their time is spent practicing. And it's the same 40 hours that we were talking about. So 25 hours practicing, 15 hours learning or so. And frankly, even when they're learning over here, they're itching to go and practice. Anyone who's been this guy over here or anyone who's still this person? Right? The absolute wrong way to achieve mastery. A 90th percentile student has a very different outlook about sentence correction. That person doesn't consider sentence correction to be purely about these 8 error types. That person has this understanding that, hey, SC is about mastering these 200 major sentence structures that are tested on the GMAT. Very, very important. Very different outlook. SC is not about these error types. Yes, those error types are important if there are rules there. But it's way more than that. Okay. For him, meaning is the primary reason. The reason why GMAT SC exists is to make sure that you communicate the correct meaning. For them, meaning is a way to solve questions. Meaning is not an error type which they check for as a part of the checklist. No, it's a means to solve questions. These people spend 60 to 70% of their time learning. Okay, about 30 odd hours learning. All right. And they get about 80 to 120 feedback points while learning. Very, very important. And then they spend about 30 to 40% of their time practicing. In other words, if you're an e-GMAT student, if you have allocated 40 hours for SC, what it means is you're going to spend about 28 hours in the SC course. If you have excellent metrics there, which is these feedback points, you're only going to take 12 hours to go from that 55th percentile to that 80th percentile ability. That's what it means. Or in other words, what it means is you'd only need to solve about 150 questions, because by the way, you will solve about 250 questions and examples while going through the course. But they would be the right order, the right difficulty level based on this. Okay. Again, this is all about attitude. Okay. The point really is if GMAT SC tests these 200 sentence structures, how would you even know if you're studying properly if you get 7 to 10 feedback points while learning? You can't. Okay. The other thing which is there is, what does that tell you as to how well you've done this? All right. Again, remember, this is where you win or lose a battle. Now, here's the other interesting piece. Even when someone starts it and comes to us with an ability which is here, we have consolidated or condensed study plans which tell you, hey, if there are certain gaps, this is what you can really do. Here, look at these groups of files. Okay. But really important, that first stage is the foundation. Think about laying bricks and building a wall. If your bricks are misaligned, no matter how much cement you put in, that wall is going to crumble down when you put the extreme pressure. And achieving that 90th percentile is very similar to being able to withstand that extreme pressure. Okay, you need those bricks aligned. That is why you need that feedback over here. Very important. Okay, and when you're learning concepts and applications, you get about 100 feedback points in the learning stages. For those of you who've taken our free trial, you've seen that. Why? Because each learning activity gives you a score. It tracks how much time you spent on it. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this over here. Also, when you're doing, how many of you have done cementing on the e-GMAT platform? I've taken a cementing quiz if you're an e-GMAT student, all right? How rigorous is that process of strategic review if you've gone through that? And how in every question it knocks your brain out because of the review that you need to do? It takes time, but the rewarding nature of it, it's very rigorous, right? It's way more, but it's essential if you want to achieve hard cementing. That's feedback here at this stage. If you don't take that feedback, you're not going to graduate from hard cementing. So again, exactly, yeah, it points out where you want to hit. So acing the GMAT or achieving 90th percentile is not about doing more questions. It's about doing the questions that you do with the rigor that you need. Okay. And then also very important with regards to giving feedback is taking the noise out, which is why when we give you feedback, we don't take a single assessment item, we take multiple assessment items so that we clear the noise out. Anyone who's a communication designer or an algorithm designer over here? Anyone designs communication systems or designs algorithms here? Yes, no? If you do that, you actually understand what I'm talking about by taking the noise out. Because if you put noise in any kind of feedback, it amplifies that noise and moves it elsewhere. Okay. For those of you who want to know how we give feedback, this video is on our website. You can watch this video too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to solve a question now, and I want you to use this question. I want to discuss, some of you asked about sentence structures. What are these 200 sentence structures, Rajat, you were talking about? And how do they mess me up? So I'm going to actually give you a poll, and I want you to solve this question using the method that you use to solve sentence correction. Now, I don't want to time you guys, so I want you to use this thing called still solving. I'm going to broadcast results. I want 30 people to select still solving before I show the question to you. This is something that we're going to use in the webinar, the number properties webinar tomorrow as well. You'll see a lot of still solving. Let's get a few more. I have 20 still solving. I want to get a few more still solving before we get there. 30 still solving. 7, 8, 28, 27. Let's get 3 more still solving, guys. Come on. All right. 1 more. Good. Here is the question. I'm going to mute myself. Take 2 to 3 minutes to solve this. All right, get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. I'm gonna end the poll. I'm gonna broadcast the results so you guys can see how you guys did. We have an equal split between choices C and E, which is great. We have choice D, which is very popular. Choice A is absolutely not popular, and choice B is somewhat popular as well. So let's look at this over here and see how how we did, and what feedback should you give yourself if you chose a certain answer choice. And if you got it right, you should give yourself a pat on the back. So we're going to solve this question. So when you think about this, do splits exist in this question? Well, not really. I mean, there's some splits. You have the church coin and the church coin in choices A and D. You have the word but in 4 or 5 answer choices. You have while in choices B and C. So essentially, yes, technically splits do exist, but there's just too many splits here, and just the permutations and combinations can be mind-boggling. Also, it's a completely underlined sentence, so I kind of don't. It becomes difficult. It's just too many variables here. So again, I have to use the meaning-based approach here. So one of the first steps in meaning-based approach is to make sure you read the sentence and you strategically pause at appropriate points. And I think the key thing over here is that hey, your goal is you want to figure out what is it that the author wants to communicate. Okay. So what I've done is, very quickly, again, the intention of this webinar is not to teach you GMAT sentence correction. So I'm going to kind of rush through this, but the intention is to show you the value of the right method and to show you how and why you should learn the right method. Okay. So this is what we call as the sentence structure. What we're saying is that what you've done is you've split this entire sentence into its constituent elements so that you can see what maps to which aspect. The church did something, coined the date February 14 as a Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. That aspect is claimed by a few experts, but then the author says, but it is celebrated on this day, so but is a contrast word here, to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. That part is the more prevalent belief. Okay. Now, when you think about it, when I read this sentence, I absolutely did not pay any attention to the grammar aspect of it. All I'm doing is I'm focusing on what does the author want to communicate, and this is what we call as extracting the aspects that the author wants to communicate. So the first thing you'd see when you do this is there are 2 claims about why February 14th is celebrated as Valentine's Day. The first claim says, hey, the church designated it and it did it with a very specific motive. The second claim says is, hey, it is to honor the anniversary of Saint Valentine's death or burial. So there's 2 specific claims, and these 2 specific claims were about 2 different entities. Claim 1 is by one set of people. Claim 2 is the general belief or the more prevalent claim that is out there. So this is what this sentence wants to communicate. Okay, the correct answer effectively will communicate this meaning. Now, when you were solving this question, which aspects did you miss, and which aspects did you actually identify? So I'm going to put in a poll question. This is the multiple response question, which means you can select more than one. I want you to tell me which ones were you worried about, or which ones were you not worried about, sorry, as you were marking the answer, not worried about. So mark the ones that you could not identify in this case. And again, you can mark multiple responses. You could say 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 3, 2 and 3, just 3 or so. So here is a piece over here. You can see number 3, the fact that claim 1 and claim 2 are by different set of people. Majority of you were not able to identify that. Okay. Or rather, most of you made a mistake, were not able to identify that. Some of you weren't able to identify number 1. Some of you weren't able to identify number 2. But the 12 of you who said 3, can I ask which answer choice did you choose? And I can tell you which answer choice did you choose most likely. You are the folks who actually I chose answer choice C, most likely. That's basically the piece over here. If you chose answer choice C, most likely you didn't. this is where you faltered, because you're going to see what happened in answer choice C. So if you understood all aspects of the meaning, congratulations, you were able to get to the meaning well enough. If you faltered because of your carelessness, or because you didn't take those meaning aspects forward, or because you didn't know the grammar. Okay. By the way, pretty much everyone did the grammar portion right over here. Right. So let's kind of see, we now understand the meaning. Let's understand the errors in the original sentence. There's just one error type in the original sentence. We have a missing subject or two missing subjects. Is claimed and is, these two verbs don't have the associated subjects, and that's an error that you take forward. Okay, so now that we know what meaning we want to communicate, now that we know what error does choice A have, let's kind of go to each answer choice. This is choice B. You can see this is written over here. This is your original choice. These are the three aspects that you have over here, so that we have all of the pre-work with us. You have to take this forward. Okay, and this is your choice B. Choice B says, while with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. Choice B now puts that ulterior motive to a few experts. The church no longer has the ulterior motive. In choice B, the experts have the ulterior motive, and because of this, it's communicating a completely different meaning. Is there a grammar error in this? No, there's no grammar error. The sentence in isolation is absolutely correct grammatically, but the problem really is it just changes the meaning. In what ways does it changes the meaning? It says that, hey, a few experts present their claim behind the celebration of Valentine's Day. The other thing is the church's motive is completely gone. Remember, your claim 1 here was that the church designated it with a specific motive. That motive is completely gone. And because of these two reasons, choice B is wrong. Okay, let's go to choice C. Choice C says, while a few experts claim that the church coined blah, 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 with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, that part is perfect, their more prevalent belief is, okay. Now, what it does is, it really just says, hey, both the claims, claim 1 and claim 2, belong to a few experts. Is that what the author wanted us to communicate from this sentence? Was that the intended meaning? No, absolutely wrong. Again, beautifully constructed sentence, flows wonderfully, but changes the meaning completely. And if you chose choice C, then you could have one of two problems. One is you didn't focus on this aspect while reading the original sentence, which means your corrective action needs to be, spend more time getting the intended meaning. Or if you did that, you didn't bring this aspect over here while evaluating this answer choice. Then the corrective action is that, hey, spend more time while evaluating answer choices. e-G matters. What did I just do? This is what your strategic review process is. This is what you fill in your error log. Not the fact that, hey, I made this kind of a mistake, but what you fill in is that either spend more time on getting the meaning from the original sentence or take that meaning forward. Okay. Why is this important? Why is this, we call this the behavioral aspect of your error log. Why is identifying this behavior important? The reason why it's important is because once you do this for 10 questions, you see those behaviors that are repeated. And changing a behavior consciously is very possible. To change that behavior or to change that approach. Okay. If you just say, hey, I'm making a grammar, I'm making a verb, subject verb error, or I'm making a verb tenses error, or making a modifier error. Yes, that's one thing. But the question is, why did you make that error? And how are you going to fix that? And 9 out of 10 times, if you're stuck at that 65th percentile, you're not making a grammar error. You're making a behavioral error. And which is what we do with that behavioral error log. This is the only, you would not find this behavioral error log anywhere else. Okay. Let's look at, we talked about this already. Let's look at choice D. Choice D was probably the hardest to reject. Okay. Because it is a very deep-rooted meaning. I'm going to read choice D. Again, you can see this is choice D over here, D for Delta. The church coined the date February 14 with an ulterior motive, blah, 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 as claimed by a few experts. I'm going to just only focus on this piece, as claimed by a few experts. Okay. And this is something that you do a lot in RC, but it's equally applicable in SC. Okay. When I say the word Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine, then am I communicating information? Yes. Am I making a claim here as someone who's making the statement? Am I making the claim that Apple is the market leader? No, I'm not making the claim. Okay, I'm just communicating information. Okay. Should I be blamed that if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Absolutely not. I'm just telling you that Forbes magazine said that Apple is the market leader. Okay. Now let's change the sentence. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. What happens in this case? Am I making a claim here? Yes. Am I communicating information? Yes. Should I be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Yes. I'm backing Forbes magazine in all three in this case. And there's a very subtle difference. It's just one word here, but when you use is versus as, can you elaborate the how piece? You're saying, how am I making a claim? Is that what your question is? Forbes is also claiming, but I am backing that claim. When I'm saying Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine, what am I saying? Hey, Forbes is saying that, but I also agree with it. Right? Because of the use of the word as. Okay. And that's a I'm using Forbes as evidence to back my claim. Absolutely. Yes. Now you're thinking the CR way. And I like how we integrate when you integrate the verbal approaches. Okay. In choice D, in the original sentence, you are not stating, my friend, when you say Apple is the market leader. When your dad tells you, okay, buy Google stock as recommended by Charles Schwab, what is your dad telling you? Is he not giving you a recommendation? Right? So he is backing that claim. Buy Google stock as it is recommended by Charles Schwab. He is backing that claim. He's pushing you to buy it. If you buy Google stock and it doesn't work well, should you blame him? Absolutely. Because he told you to buy it. If he just says, hey, buy Google stock, that aspect is recommended by Charles Schwab, then you are the one who's making the decision. He's merely communicating information. Okay, and this choice makes the same mistake over here. It really makes the author back both of these pieces over here, and which is not what the author intended to do. Okay, let's look at choice E. Choice E fixes all the errors, keeps the meaning the same. That the church coined, blah, 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 is claimed by few experts. The author is not claiming that. That the church coined is claimed by a few experts, but the more prevalent belief is, saying not my belief, but in general people's belief is, it is celebrated on this date to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Okay. Why do people reject this? I mean, this is so simple. One is they don't focus on the meaning. Then they really say, hey, there's something which says that something started with that, and essentially this is really awkward, and GMAT SC cannot be awkward. Then some people really say there needs to be a that over here, which they think it's an essential connector. No. And then some people say is this word is claimed is passive voice, and I've been told passive voice is wrong on the GMAT. So that's why I'm going to reject this. Okay. Anyone who's used one of these three reasons? OG explanations. I'm going to, yeah, the church sounded wrong to me. Why? Tell me one thing. Why does the GMAT have sentence correction? I mean, why are they even worried about sentence correction on the GMAT? I mean, you're going to study business strategies. Why is SC important? Have you guys ever thought about it? Why do we have SC on the GMAT? Or as a business leader, should you be knowing? I mean, do you think Satya Nadella knows what a participle phrase is, or what a noun plus noun modifier is? No. Or Sundar Pichai, who by the way had an 800 on the GMAT. No. What every business leader needs to do is communicate precisely. And the reason why SC is there is, and by the way, for the same reason why CR and RC are there, is because proper communication of ideas, making good solid arguments, and essentially inferring information when information is presented to you. Okay. Business leaders are not supposed to be poets. They should not be. They're supposed to be precise and clear communicators. And that precision is what's important, and which is what GMAT sentence correction tests, not elegance. How many of you have heard passive voice is wrong? Passive is not wrong. No, yes. I'm sure someone would have heard, because some people say that. Passive is wrong. Being is wrong on the GMAT. That's all. Why? Why is passive voice wrong? Have you ever asked why passive voice is wrong? No, it's not. There's no construct of English that is wrong. Let me just say this over here. In fact, we wrote an article, the first one, and this was written in 2014, where we gave examples of being not wrong. We gave 5 examples where being was used in the correct answer. Okay. Yeah, why? It's not a rule. I mean, here is the thing. Anyone who says, I'm going to teach you tricks to ace the GMAT doesn't know how the GMAT works. Because there are no tricks on the GMAT. There's just logical approaches. Okay. Why is passive voice wrong? Can someone tell me? And in what scenario is passive voice wrong? In what scenario is passive voice wrong? Can someone tell me? Has anyone told you when they say? Let me just show you this. What's the difference between active and passive here? John killed the deer was killed. What's the difference here? Hides the identity of John, absolutely. The reason why in certain scenarios passive voice is wrong is because it communicates the incomplete intent of the author. There's nothing wrong with passive voice. Okay? It is a perfectly acceptable construct in the context of the GMAT. But if the author wants to communicate who killed the deer and you use passive voice, then you are missing out an aspect, and which is why it's wrong. There's nothing wrong with passive voice. The problem is meaning. Had I written the deer was killed by John, it would have been perfectly okay. But people who don't study the GMAT, they really say, hey, I saw this passive voice. This is the reason why it must be wrong, because it's passive voice. No. Passive voice is not wrong. The fact that it hides information when you write a sentence in the passive construct, that is what leads to hiding the meaning, and which is what makes it incorrect. Okay. If it's a valid construct in English, it's a valid construct on the GMAT. It's just that does it help you communicate the meaning? If you use that as your litmus test, you're gonna get to the correct answer. Some people even tell you that passive voice or being is wrong in 80% of the cases, right? They even go on to really do that. Have you heard any of this? 90% of the cases being is going to be wrong, so you can reject that answer choice. And this gives you a disproportionate advantage. Has someone heard that statement? Because I've seen experts say that. Yes, no? 80%, 90%. Some people say all is wrong in CR answer choices. So avoid extreme answer choices in critical reasoning. Anyone heard that? No? Okay, then I'm not going to move forward if you guys haven't heard that. All right, so let's talk about this. Why did you select the incorrect answer choice? Really important to answer this question so that you guys can then focus on understanding how to correct your mistake. Hey, you guys there with me? Just yes, no? Can you type in yes or no here? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Now, one of the other things I said earlier, GMAT SC is about multiple sentence structures. Did you see just one question? How many sentence structures were there in this? Can you see the sentence structure play versus a grammar play? How these sentence structures were hiding the notions of the various constructs of grammar? And when you acing SC is about acing sentence structure. Similarly, acing CR is about acing visualization and pre-thinking. It's not so much about strengthen, weaken, evaluate, and all of that. You build that core skill of visualization, you're golden over there. Okay. So that 90th percentile is about that perfection across. So you have to have the right foundation. You have to use that foundation and solve questions using the right method. And then you have to fix those gaps that remain, and those gaps have to be personalized to you. Okay. And to make sure that you are heads and shoulders above the competition, that feedback is really important at each of these stages. And it is where those 500 points of personalized feedback are really important. And some people say, okay, so what? You give me feedback for every learning activity. What you don't recognize is, if you don't get feedback, how would you know you didn't really do SC, subject, verb, agree, number correctly, or always singular subjects correctly, or noun plus noun modifiers correctly? And if you leave that gap, you might have that, a 700 level question might test that concept, and you may have 80% of the things right. But because of that one feedback that you did not get at that point, you might make a mistake. In every question, there are about 7 to 8 faltering points. This is a great question. Again, more suitable for ISC webinar, but I'll answer this. You need to read it a couple of times to register the meaning and structure. Where am I going wrong? Are you going wrong? Absolutely, well, somewhat, not a whole lot. What should you do to understand the meaning and structure in a single read? What should this person do to understand the meaning and structure if this person needs to read the entire thing 2 times? Okay, pause points. That's very important, yes, and that's an important piece. Active reading, yes. Tell him something that he can use right away. All are good inputs, not precise. I would say next time when you read, slow down. And when you slow down, of course, you'll do pause points. Absolutely slow down. You're reading too fast. You're reading too fast for your ability. Let me just say this. A lot of times, what we do is, we ask ourselves, how long do I take to read the sentence? And I ask my friend, how long does it take to read the sentence? And if the same sentence I take about, let's say, 20 seconds to read, and my friend takes, or let's say 30 seconds, and my friend takes 20, I try to match 20. Does that happen? I want to match my friend step by step, or I want to really make sure I get to that. We do that? Yes, no? And in doing so, you end up doing that, but you end up doing more harm than good. Listen to your body, listen to your brain. If you need to read it twice, then most likely you're reading it too fast. And in And because of that, you end up taking a lot longer. So slow down. It's not advice that's not only going to work for SC, but it's also going to work for CR and RC. And as you slow down, you're going to save time. The need to reread needs to go down. In fact, I would say for the next 6 questions, tell yourself you will not allow yourself a second read. The first read is the only read that you will get, and you will see the quality of your answers will go up tremendously. Your level of understanding will go up tremendously. Okay. What happens when you don't have feedback? And lots of online courses, but to build that feedback engine in there, you need to build technology to do that, and that needs a lot of investment. So when a 30th percentile student goes through a bunch of learning activities, he or she may get to a 60th percentile, but that's about it. A 60th percentile sometimes may actually not even hit the 60th percentile. Why? Because the feedback isn't there. Okay. And so when 1,000 people go through a set of learning activities, they may learn to 1,000 different degrees if there is no feedback built at the learning stage. And this is where you lose the battle. At e-GMAT, we still have this variation, but there's a certain normalization that happens when you, regardless of who's starting at which ability, we can assure a certain minimum ability if you take feedback into account. If you do not incorporate feedback, if you don't really take into account the meaning-based approach, and you continue to use the splits method, that's not going to happen. But people who incorporate feedback, we can fix that. One of the biggest things, in addition to this, that we can do is optimize a learning activity. Think about it this way. Let's say you have a noun plus noun modifier learning activity. How do you know it works for 90% of students, or how do you know it works for someone who starts at a 30th percentile if you don't evaluate that activity for a 30th percentile student? The only way you can know it works for that individual activity works for the 30th percentile student is if you figure out what the ability level of student is who's starting that activity, and when you figure out when 200 people go through that activity, what's the end score over there? And that end score is not high, it's not high enough, then you go back, look at that activity, improve on that activity, improve on the explanations over there. And we do a lot of this, which you guys don't see, where we look at, is this activity suitable for a student who's starting at this ability? And how do 100 people who start at a 50th percentile, when they go through verb tenses, how do they fare? And if they're not faring well in a certain activity, how can we improve on that? When you do those improvements, that's when you get this. Anyone has a Samsung or one of the latest iPhones here? Yes, okay. How are the macro photos, or I shouldn't say the macro photos, how are the portrait shots from a Samsung phone, or even a Huawei phone, or the latest iPhone? How are the skin tones there? Really good, right? How do you think they achieve those skin tones with the tiny sensor and the tiny lens? And how did they make that improvement over iPhone 12 or iPhone 11? What process do you think they went through? Have you ever asked? Yes, feedback. Those were one of the biggest. How many of you use iCloud yeah, machine learning is a very simple way to say. How many of you use iCloud or Google Photos to back your photos? You do. What happens when a photo goes on iCloud? All the photographic parameters go there. And then when they look at it, they analyze the macro shots. They say, okay, this is good, this is not good. When they look at iPhone 11 data, and they say, okay, what can I do? What kind of lighting should have come through the lens to improve the skin tones, to make the skin tones more natural? They use that to build those machine learning algorithms. The process of improving anything remains the same, which is why Take a macro shot, take a portrait shot with iPhone 11, do it with iPhone 13, identical lighting condition. You'll see very different results. Why? Because that's how the improvement works. The same thing, that's how it works across learning activities. The only way you make it work for a large population, or in other words, get excellent portrait shots, is by collecting data and figuring out what's working and what's not working. Okay. And it's really important. That's the only reason we collect data, to really say what's working and what's not working. Does that make sense? And everyone does improvement that way, if you want to improve, that is. Okay. And which is why we get this disproportionate number of scores. I mean, all of us teach the same GMAT content. It's not so much about the content. It's a lot about the methods, yes. But in addition to that, it's a lot more about that feedback and personalization that we do to your learning, as well as the enhancements that we do to our learning content. Okay. Because when it comes to that 90th percentile, it is because of perfection in all areas. And that's why you get these feedback points. Okay. Again, remember those 3 stages of learning, really, really important. And make sure you start learning at the right stage. I'm actually going to skip through this because I think we've talked a bit about this. But at this point, it's about 2 hours and 11 minutes into the webinar. I actually kind of want to end this webinar, and because I think hopefully you guys got what you needed from this webinar, and all your questions were answered. But just to summarize, aim for that high score. Understand that when it comes to the GMAT, it's a test of ability. And again, all of those other things, those timing, the section orders, the ability to sit through a 3-hour long test, they only matter once you have ability. Okay. Build that personalized study plan and start with the right stage of learning. All right. And then make sure you make use of that feedback. With that, I'm going to hide this here, and I'm on the Q&A part. I'd be happy to take those questions. I already have a couple of questions. I have this question from Bhushan, which is a really great one, which I'm going to do that. Any other questions, you can please put in over here in this. I want this poll on the right hand side, the vertical long one where you've been typing in, to tell me how do you find the webinar, and then let me share the session presentation so that those who don't have questions, you guys can actually do that. Hold on, I actually didn't upload today's presentation. Let me get that because I updated it. And we have that. And then guys, feedback on the session, please. In the short answer pod where it says host question. And let me get you some web links over here. Here are the links. For those of you who are looking at last mile pushers, you can look at Jim's LMP. You can look at a couple of these over here as well. And then for those of you who want to know about AI and analytics and how it leads to this, or those of you who want to know about our support, you guys can do that. Will there be any negative marks if you don't answer the question? Yes. So please answer every question. It's on the GMAT, don't leave any question unanswered. Let's get to that. Okay. All right, near the end of the exam, Bhushan says, when we have very little time, should you select random answers in an attempt to answer more or all questions, or attempt the remaining questions properly, even if it leads to the last few questions? Okay, let me answer this question in a way which I think is something that you would understand. Let's take a case study here. You have 10 minutes, you have 8 questions to answer, and you know you are going to get 1 RC, and which is going to be about 3 to 4 questions, and the remaining SC and CR. Okay. In what scenario would you attempt that RC properly? Let me explain this. 10 minutes, 8 questions, you know you're going to get 1 RC. In what scenario would you attempt that RC properly? In the short answer pod. Guys, question in the Q&A pod, please. Short answer pod for your answer. So if you are short on time, what you want to do is you want to maximize your likelihood of success. So which means if your strength is SC and CR,
Make sure you spend the appropriate amount of time, which we call as your third time, on SC and CR questions. If your strength is RC, make sure you do the same on RC overall. And then, you actually quickly answer the other ones. Do not leave a question unanswered. So the principle is don't leave a question unanswered and do not rush through areas of your strength. That's my principle. Okay. So don't randomly mark 2 or 3. If you think CR is your absolute strength, do not shortchange CR. In the same way, if you're in the last 20 days of the quarter and Google wants to improve its earning per day, then it's going to focus on the business that has the highest potential to improve that earnings per day. If CR is your strength, then CR has the highest potential to improve your ability, to improve your end score. Okay. So Bhushan, does that answer your question? Okay. Hopefully that does. Amit says, how long will cementing last once done? Amit, once done, cementing lasts. Okay. You may have to just come back and review your cementing quizzes, but there's the reason why it's called cementing. It lasts. Once you cement a wall, you don't go back and cement it again. That's why we have 3 medium and 3 hard cementing quizzes. Do we have experience in deferred MBA programs? Why don't you ask the question? We don't do admission consulting, but we have experience in a lot of stuff MBA related because we have many folks within the company who've had admits and scholarships. What's the cost of the program in Indian rupees? Go to our website. I mean, we have 3 programs. They start, I think, with 199 and go up to 399, and translate. You charge in you pay in US dollars, whatever is the conversion rate that your credit card company charges, which usually is the interbank conversion rate, which is I think 75 right now. That's what it is. The reason we charge in US dollars, some people ask this, is because when you do that, you don't pay GST. You save 17.5%. So if you want to pay in Indian rupees, we'll be happy to offer you an option to do that. It's just that you'll pay 17.5% extra. So you can choose to decide. 99% of the people get a credit card and pay in US dollars. Can a score of 750 compensate for a low GPA? Absolutely, yes. I think we have some examples where we can share that. Let's just see. Let's get there. Let's see if I can share that interview with you. This is an interview which we did with one of our Wharton students. One of our students who is now studying at Wharton, and yeah, so he had a low GPA. He's a 750 score. I think you should be able to click on this one over here. Is there a separate fee structure for verbal training? Again, guys, if you put your question in the Q&A pod, I can actually give you links as well. We offer just one program, which is GMAT Online. If you just need verbal training, take the 2-month version. That's basically what it does. Now, we used to offer a verbal online program. The problem was the mock test didn't come with it. You didn't get Scholarinium's Platinum, which is the best version of Scholarinium. You got some features, you didn't get some features. And then typically when people came in, they said, hey, we want more mocks because our mocks are way better than official mocks. They give you ESR plus analysis. Plus then we like all the analytics and other pieces, and it led to a lot of back and forth. So we said, hey, we used to sell our verbal course for $249, and that was, a 5-6 month option. Now we sell a GMAT online course for $199, and most people who just need the verbal course get done in 2 months anyway. So 680 to 760, typically about a month and a half is what most working professionals take, or about 80 to 100 hours of improvement. Okay. Guys, questions in the Q&A pod, please, not on the right. Verbal training, Q50, V25 guy, Ronak. I mean, tell me the question. I mean, why is it that you're stuck? You probably were studying the wrong things. If that's what your question is, why are you still at V25? Because, stage one, V25 is stage one. Most likely there are lots of gaps in your learning, or B, you're not following the right methods. But you're really smart because you have a Q50, which means you can do logic. Okay. So that's, given the question that you put in, that's what I can answer. But if you have another question, change the question. I'll be happy to answer that. Dimple, I need to know your starting score to tell you if 40 days are enough for you. Okay. Do we provide assistance after GMAT, like college assistance? We don't, Prakram. Those are two very different businesses, and I know there are companies that do, and they don't do justice to either one. Just to really put stuff in context, we are about a 41% company. We work full time helping you as the GMAT. And most of these other companies that do admission consulting and test prep, they're 4 or 5% companies. They do everything. And again, the question that you have to ask is, how is it that they're able to do everything? And why is it that they don't have success? So what we do is we work with some of the best admission consulting companies, and we can recommend you, and we can tell you who is good and who isn't. But we don't do admission consulting. We know a lot about admissions, but we don't do admission consulting ourselves. It's just that we don't like to do anything that we can't do justice to. That's something that's a principle at e-GMAT. If we can't be the best at something, we would not do it. AS says I have a work of 7 years and I'm targeting 730. Will that long work? Your work X is not long. You're fine. I don't know who told you that your work X is long. I understand it's not in the 5 to 6 year range, but no one bothers about that 7 year range. I mean, no business school worthy enough bothers anyway. Okay. So yes, I don't know who told you about that. Hey man, you may be a bit late for your MBA. You're absolutely not late for your MBA. If you go to our YouTube channel, okay, and let me share a link with a playlist where one of the things that you do when you have so many good students is you bring them back and say, how did you get into a top business school? And this is something that we started doing this year. And so if you go look at this playlist, you will find lots and lots of older students who are doing their second MBA, students who are 25, 30 years old. So yeah. How can you manage GMAT prep with a hectic work schedule, 11 hours a day? That's a good question, and that's the trick about doing an MBA. Why it's really important. So you have to manage it. Let me just tell you one thing. In your life, when you want to do something new, something has to give. I mean, Arun bhai, you either have to probably plan how to make your food meals upfront. So for example, we as a family, I work crazy hours. So for me, Sunday, 3 hours go on meal planning, and my entire week with regards to what the entire family is going to eat in lunch, breakfast, and dinner is written down on a spreadsheet and is on the fridge. So that's something which is there. The second thing which is there is building schedules. So first thing is figure out what is it you're not going to do. So the first thing that we figured out, and a lot of our students do the same thing, is they figure out how are they going to make time. They talk to their spouses, they talk to their boyfriends, girlfriends, and they tell themselves that they are not going to be able to do X, Y, or Z. Really important to have that conversation. Number one, really important to plan this, or really important to tell yourself you're not going to spend time watching TV or so. What they do not do is they do not give up on workout. Really important also. Okay. The second thing that they do is they build a schedule. So procrastination happens when you have to make a decision, should I study at this time or not? They either study in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening, but they study at the same time every day. Okay, they don't have to make a decision, so they create that schedule. And if you watch success stories on our platform, on our YouTube platform, you'll see that depending on what's suitable for someone, they do that. The third thing is they build they kind of change their day slightly so that they get more time out. So, for example, if you're commuting to work, buy a pair of headphones. Make sure you have cellular connectivity during commute, so that you can work while you're traveling. So those are things which are there. Anurba, does that work? Ronak says, so verbal training, do we have a course for 30 days? Ronak, the question is, do you need 30 days? If you need 30 days, then, we'll figure out and tell you something, but it's not going to be much more cheap. Okay. Navpreet, I had V38, V38, V40, V41 on official marks and V28 on the actual test. Is that an outlier, Navpreet? I can't tell you, to be very frank. Why? Because a lot of people, do you practice on GMAT Club? A lot of people who practice on GMAT Club, they actually end up using a lot of questions. One of the worst things about practicing on GMAT Club is that essentially you use questions that you get on official marks, and which makes official marks, which by the way are very representative, unrepresentative. Because if you've seen even 7 questions, it just messes the entire thing up. Okay, so is your performance an outlier? I don't know. I think if you take a sigma x mark, and if you get a certain performance over there, I'd be much more certain in this case. It could be an outlier. It could be because you were familiar. The only way is if we look at a metric that we trust. And it's just that so many people solve official GMAT prep questions or official mock questions on GMAT Club that even though we trust the algorithm, we've stopped trusting the results of those. How is admission counseling from if you were pretty sure that you were not familiar with those mock questions, then it was an outlier, Navpreet. If you can be 100% certain that you've not seen those questions, then it's an outlier. Again, take a sigma x mock just to confirm. How do you go from 710 to 760 in a month? You join e-GMAT in very simple ways, and you join what we call as a last mile push program, and that's how you go from 710 to 760. We have a special program for people who are in that 660 to 710 range, and we help them get to. The idea is to get those next 50 points or so. Okay, so I'm going to actually respond to Navpreet's question, since your question is not there in the Q&A pod, where we talk about how does the LMP program work. You can really see that come in the Q&A pod. How about taking admission consulting from USIEF? I actually don't know that firm, I'll be very frank. I will have to look that up. Let me just look at this over here and see if I know anyone who does that. Because usually I know most of the reputable people here. Does an IIT dropout tag matter? The fact that you got into an IIT is somewhat useful, but remember this, we're talking about you at least have 5 to 6 years of a work X. So what matters more than an IIT dropout is what you did during those 5 to 6 years. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, 4 years. What did you do during those 4 years? That matters way more than the fact that you are an IIT dropout. Remember, so one thing that I want to talk about, because a lot of people really think about admissions to European, to ISB, and to USB schools is very similar to how admissions happen in IIM, where your tier 1 college has a certain weight, your undergrad scores have a certain weight or so. Nothing like that is there when it comes to admission to ISB or USB schools. We don't give specific outcomes certain weights. What we do is we're very flexible over here, where we say, hey, Let's say you did really poorly in your board exams. Let's say you are from a tier 2 college, but you've done exceptional work, um, and you've made a huge outcome impact on in the organization that you worked in. None of those grades matter. I mean, you'll have to explain why those grades are there, but what matters is what you've achieved professionally. What matters is the leadership that you've shown professionally. Okay. On the other hand, you may be someone who's excelled academically, who's from a tier 1 school but has been had an easy life since then. You'll likely not get into a tier 1 school, because again, what matters is the impact that you've had. Does failed startup entrepreneur matter? I mean, the question is, what have you learned from it, and what have you done with those learnings, and how do your post MBA goals align with this? So, the fact that you started something matters, yes. And that's kind of where, if you have a failed startup, those letter of recommendations, I think, will be very interesting. Your interview experience would be very interesting in this case. Okay. So I looked at United States India Education Foundation uh, overall, and I frankly I've not heard about them in the context of admissions to the US. Just to be very, very frank, there are institutions who actually do professional admission consulting, and there are people who really say we will get you to the US. I would not work, if you want to get into Wharton, I would not work with people who want to get you to the US. Let me just say very clearly. Okay. Or in other words, I would not work with companies that say we work with a certain university in the US, and we will get you there. Why? Because universities that have such contacts here are usually people universities that don't get enough applications, and you don't want to study there, at least if you're in this webinar. Okay. And someone else can share. Oh, I know the Fulbright scholarship. I agree with that. The question is, are they good in admission consulting? Okay. Should you apply for a Fulbright scholarship? That's a very different question than are they good in admission consulting? That was the question that I was answering. Okay. So because that was the question that was there. Abhishek says global MBA entirely on education loan. What, Abhishek, is there a question? Should you take an education loan to do a global MBA? If I understand that correctly. Okay. Yes, if you get your own top school, why not? In fact, I think there's an article that I haven't read that article completely. It just popped in my feed yesterday where Wall Street Journal said the MBA actually has one of the best ROIs. So absolutely, lots of people do that. Why are you worried about taking a loan for doing your MBA? In fact, the beauty about this is if you get into a top school, you get a loan at a really good interest rate. So what's the concern? The ROI is there. You can do the math. Okay. Any other question, guys? Do top schools provide a good amount of scholarships? Again, put the question here. And if you go to admits and scholarships, you'd be able to see that. USB schools give about $200 million worth of scholarship every year. If you have a great GMAT score, if you have a good profile, very high likelihood you're going to get a scholarship. And we have lots and lots of examples. Here is a page that we have which is devoted to our students, and it's going to come against Abhishek's name. You're going to see it, it's going to pop up in the Q&A part. Yes. But here's something that I will tell you, and it's a mistake that I made. I don't want you to make the mistake. I got into Babson with a full ride. I got into GSP Chicago with no scholarship. I chose Babson. If given the choice again, I would choose GSP Chicago or Booth, as you guys know that. Okay. So even if you don't get a scholarship, but you get into a top school, choose a top school. Just the ROI is there. It's not so much about brand names, it's about the outcomes. Okay, it's about, I mean, for example, Keenan Flagler, you probably don't know the brand name, but excellent recruitment there. Okay, so is it a brand name? No, but do companies recruit from here? I know I'm not a Fulbrighter, just to really say. I had a full ride from Babson. So I had I had multiple full scholarships because of my GMAT score, and so yeah. So so in this case, um, the piece over there is don't worry about look at the ROI, not so much about the loan. Just you're talking about a life transforming experience when it comes to the MBA. Some colleges say that they do not require work specifically for MBA. If there is a college that says it doesn't require work X, please stay away from it. Okay, just to be very clear, a business school that doesn't require work X for an MBA, okay, not for a master's degree, but not for an MIM, but for an MBA, stay away from it. They just want your money. That's my recommendation to you. Great question. In what situations should you waive further? That's a great question. A lot of people ask this question today. I actually wrote an article on this, and again, remember this. I'm somewhat biased, but we get enough students that I don't matter. It doesn't matter to me as much. So you should waive the GMAT if you have a very unique profile, and I want to just make sure of what a unique profile is. So we have this student who works in the third biggest city in Brazil, or he used to work, and he's now studying at Harvard and Stanford. He's doing a joint degree from Stanford and Harvard Kennedy School, and this guy worked in the urban development of that city, and he worked with business leaders for about 4 years. Okay, if you're someone like that, Harvard and Stanford will suck you up. Now, he actually took our course and he scored a 710, but he, from the 1,000 or so students that I personally know of every year, I can really say a handful of people who probably don't need a GMAT score or so. Okay. The other question that I have to ask you is, if you think about it, a university has a candidate with a very similar profile as yours with a GMAT score, and you don't have a GMAT score, who do you think they will choose? Because one of the other things, yes, you're hearing about GMAT waivers, but what is the other thing that you're hearing about median scores at top business schools? Can someone type it out? What is the other thing? What's been the median scores at top business schools in this particular year? Median GMAT scores. They've been there on record high. Okay. So when median GMAT scores are record high, then how do you think those universities are behaving? Okay. LOR from a very popular name will help in admission. Absolutely not. If that person doesn't know you, then that LOR will do way more harm than good. Business school will ask you, what work did you do for this guy? Because while filling out a letter of recommendation, I have done that for about 3 e-GMATers. When I say e-GMATers, e-GMAT employees, not students, so don't come to me for an LOR. They ask you how many hours per week did you interact with an individual? Okay. What specific guidance did you do that? Okay. So that's very important. So frankly, what matters is how much does your recommender know you, rather than what his or her designation is. Now, yes, if he has graduated from a top B school, that's good. But let's say if I had 2 recommenders, one who knew me really well, who actually gave me personal advice, and other who probably worked with me once a quarter, but was a graduate from a top B school, I would take it from the one who knew me really well. And by the way, the other guy won't even give you the LOR. Just because of e-GMAT, the average scores have increased. We don't have evidence of that, but I hope that's the case. But yeah, I don't have evidence of that. Not done research. Maybe we should. The test waiver question. Any doubt on that? US versus European B schools. The person should type in no so that I can address that. If you still have a doubt, you can edit that question and with regards to the doubt. US versus European B schools in the context of scholarships. European B schools, very rare. I mean, the link that I sent, you'd see there are very few European B schools. It's not that we don't get students in European B schools. About a quarter of our students go to European B schools. But yeah, European B schools don't give out scholarships. That's why I like the US B schools. Better work permit, a better path to work permit, really good scholarships, way better salaries, way lower taxes. 4 benefits that US has over Europe. The only benefit that I see that Europe, actually 2 benefits that I see Europe has: 1 year MBA, number 1. Number 2, way better work-life balance in terms of working in Europe. I mean, working in Europe, you're going to work fewer hours or so. The third benefit is if you are from India, yes, the commute to India is practically nothing. So you can go from Germany to India or England to India in about 8 to 9 hours. So yeah. Okay. All right, guys. With that, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys. I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I think we've gotten every question answered, and yeah. So as next steps, make sure you take on the free trial. Make sure you actually take a look at that Sigma X mock and build that personalized study plan or so, and attend tomorrow's webinar. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the evening or rest of the day, depending on where you are.